A truly terrifying incident happened late one summer night, almost a decade ago, and it still gives me shivers whenever I think about it. I used to live with my maternal grandfather in a 2-story house with my very loving extended family for work-related reasons. During that time, I enjoyed staying up late watching TV, and so I usually slept in the room that had the TV. The TV was in a room in the attic, which was the only room up there along with a small bathroom. The room had 2 wooden beds, a fan, and a television. It also had 4 windows covered with curtains that overlooked the terrace and the railing. The only entrance to the room was a wooden door with see-through mesh on the top half. The staircase leading downstairs was outside the room, just a few steps past the doorway. My uncle used to lock the door at the bottom of the stairs from the other side to keep any potential robbers out. One night, after finishing my TV time, I locked the room's door, closed the curtains, and went to sleep. I was fast asleep when suddenly I woke up to the sound of knocking at the door. At first, I thought it might be one of my uncles or cousins. I checked the time and it was around 2:30 in the morning. I decided to check who was at the door, and what I witnessed still terrifies me to this day. I got up and walked over, and through the see-through part of the door, I saw a young boy, around 5 or 6 years old, dressed in dirty and dark clothes. I couldn't see his face because he turned away as soon as I got up. Before I could process what was happening, he ran towards the railing of the stairs and abruptly jumped off, disappearing in an instant. It wasn't a human being. After realizing what I had just witnessed, fear overwhelmed me and I began crying. I was too scared to do anything else, so I quickly ran back to bed and started reciting prayers. My uncles came to check on me. I was trembling and had a very high fever. I told him what had happened, but nobody believed me. They tried to convince me that it was all in my head, but even now, I still believe that what I saw was real. After that day, I started sleeping downstairs, and eventually, I moved out of the house altogether. This is an incident that happened on a rainy day when I was in 3rd grade. At the time, and in general when I was a kid, I didn't really believe in ghosts and such. On that rainy day, I had just gotten home from school, and I decided to finish all my assignments before I watched TV and played on my Nintendo DS. After I finished all my assignments, I took a peek into the kitchen to see whether my mom was home yet.
"Ma, can you turn on the TV?"
I asked when I saw her cooking dinner.
"Sure,"
she replied. She walked to the living room and turned on the TV for me. Then she went back to the kitchen and continued preparing dinner. I played on my Nintendo DS while the TV was on in the background. I was having fun playing Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, when suddenly I saw a tall, dark figure in my peripheral vision. I was too focused on the game until I noticed that the figure was slowly walking towards me. I stopped playing and looked at it, but I didn't move my head from its position so it wouldn't be obvious that I was looking. It was wearing a long-sleeved shirt and black pants. I wasn't scared at all until I saw the upper parts of its body. The figure was headless. What I saw sent a shiver down my spine. I was so scared that I couldn't move. My mind wasn't working. What do I do? I asked myself repeatedly. I wanted to shout, but my mouth felt like it was glued shut. The moment I turned my head to face the figure is a moment I will never forget. The figure was bent and contorted and walking strangely, and the image of it is burned into my memory. I closed my eyes and prayed that the figure would go away. Fortunately, when I opened my eyes, the figure was gone. I ran to my mom, crying. She asked me,
"What happened?"
Then I told her about the terrifying figure that I had seen. Looking at her expression, my mom didn't seem so surprised.
"The figure that you saw was one of our ancestors. Maybe he just wanted to visit the house,"
she said. Still shaken up by what I'd seen, I asked,
"Why doesn't he have a head?" "You're too young to know the whole story,"
she replied.
My name is Ami. This incident happened to me when I was in college. I was 20 years old, living alone in my college housing. It was just another ordinary day for me. I had just finished my classes and decided to stop by the nearest grocery store to pick up a few things before heading home. As I walked through the aisles, I noticed a man with bloodshot eyes and torn clothes staring at me from a distance. His eerie smile gave me chills, and I could feel his gaze following me around the store. I tried to brush it off and quickly grabbed what I needed before making my way to the checkout. As I stood in line, I could feel his presence getting closer and closer. It was then that he leaned in close to me and whispered something in my ear that I couldn't quite make out. Feeling uneasy, I hurriedly paid for my items and rushed to my car in the parking lot. As I was about to get in, I heard footsteps behind me and turned around to see the man from the store charging towards me with a knife in his hand. I managed to dodge his attack and scramble into my car, locking the doors behind me. He pounded on the windows and screamed obscenities as I frantically tried to start the car and escape. After what felt like an eternity, I finally managed to get away and called the police as soon as I was a safe distance away. The police searched the area, but they couldn't find the man. I was terrified and couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there somewhere, watching me. Days went by, and I tried my best to move on, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. One night, as I lay in bed trying to sleep, a thunderstorm rolled in. The rain pounded against my window, and every time there was a bolt of lightning, it illuminated my room like daylight. I woke up at around 5 or 6 a.m., startled by a particularly loud thunderclap that shook the entire house. As I tried to calm myself down and go back to sleep, I noticed a strange shadow on the wall. It was in the shape of a human, but something about it seemed off. As the lightning flashed again, I saw the silhouette of a man standing outside my window, his face pressed up against the glass, watching me. My heart leapt into my throat, and I froze in terror. Suddenly, I saw him. The man from the store was standing outside my window, holding his knife and staring at me with that same twisted smile. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or scream, as he disappeared with each subsequent bolt of lightning. I knew I had to do something, so I bolted out of bed and ran to the front door to make sure it was locked, but it was too late. As I turned around, I saw the man standing in my living room, his twisted grin wider as he pointed his knife at me. I was trapped, cornered, with nowhere to go. The crazy man then charged at me, shouting, "You are mine! You are mine! You are mine!" I fell to the ground, paralyzed by fear, and then he got on top of me and whispered in my ear calmly, "I got you." He then started laughing maniacally. He started cutting my clothes off with his knife. I couldn't move. His strength overpowered me. Just when I thought it was all over, I heard a loud thud and saw the man fall to the ground. I then saw my neighbor on top of the man punching him. He then strangled the man until he went unconscious. After seeing the man unconscious on the floor, a feeling of relief washed over my body. I asked my neighbor how he knew I was in danger. Apparently, he had woken up from the loud storm and had gone into the kitchen to get some water when, through the window, he saw the man standing around the building I lived in and became concerned. He grabbed his coat and went outside to follow him and watched from afar to see what was going on. After seeing him enter my building, he rushed in behind him and saved my life. I called the police, and they arrived quickly, arresting the man and taking him away. It wasn't until later that they told me he had just been released after 30 years in prison for attempted murder and assault. The whole ordeal left me traumatized, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched for months afterwards. Even now, years later, I still have nightmares about that night and the man who almost took my life. And I can't even imagine what might have happened if my neighbor hadn't shown up at that moment.